True. You get running, it's not there. And Razz, I got a Razz on you here. A rock to the schnoz is not necessarily going to hurt your looks.
Oh,
that's one good one.
oh, nice.
Damn it, man.
I think Andy just going to become the seventh member of this group here. You have
Really?
one every weekend.
How
now.
often are
He's
you
like a-
available on Monday nights? Because you could join the party anytime.
My grandpa taught me when I was little never to be a member of any club, group, or organization that would have me as a member. So
Yeah.
I think you guys have pretty low standards.
Nothing to do with nothing to do with Reitzel, but one of the pet peeves of mine around open wheel racing is you'll see guys push off to check for something, and they'll throw a helmet on, and that's it. Cargo shorts and a t-shirt and a helmet.
Yeah.
And if you're ever going to have a problem, a fuel leak or an oil leak, is it going to be when you're checking something out after you had a problem? I think if you get behind the wheel of a race car, whether it's on the track or in the parking lot or out behind your shop or whatever, put the damn fire suit on.
We have, you mentioned a little while ago, but we have Carolina Sprint Tour, and we're a Race Saver 305 series that runs within 3 hours of Charlotte. And we have this year we have a 18 or 19 race schedule. I think 20 is where we're going to cap it off this year. If we get to that point, we may be done here at 18 or 19. And we have a bunch of working class guys that come run. Our first race this year was February 2nd in Lakeview, South Carolina. And we had 18 cars show up down there. We go this coming Saturday to Livonia, Georgia, and we're looking at 19 or 20 cars. So to have a pretty good contingency, a decent car count of sprint cars here in the Carolinas, and we start 20 in the feature. If we get more than that, I hate to send anybody home, but we got to make provisions and figure out how we're going to pay those last few starters to add them to the show. If a promoter's got a good night going on, they're usually pretty easy going, and they'll go right along with it. And they won't think anything about adding another car or two. $250 each is we pay $1,000 to win, $250 to start. So, and it breaks down pretty nicely all the way down through the payoff and makes it pretty feasible. And we try to do a lot of double headers so guys can come from all over and run with us and get 2 nights in. And if you have 2 bad nights, you still go home with $500. That'll help cover at least some of the fuel expenses to get here and back. But with that series, I race direct for it, and that's in my driver's meeting. We do not fire engines until right after driver's meeting. When the guys come to driver's meeting, I like them to have fire suits on, have everything on. We can kind of take a quick glance, make sure they're doing everything correctly and they have the right stuff. But when they fire off, I require helmet on, gloves and shoes, fire suit on, and seat belts, all the above. I want everything hooked up, just like you're going out on the racetrack. And I want you buckled in that thing the right way. We ran Livonia quite a few, 4 or 5 years ago now with USCS with the 360 cars, another group that runs down here in the Southeast with us. Our own car runs 360 and 410. Our car doesn't run the 305 series with us because that's a little bit of a conflict of interest. So my driver likes to run what he considers to be a tougher challenge, so he goes and runs the bigger shows. But we were down there pushing off, and a guy in a pair of shorts, cut off tank top t-shirt, no gloves, flip-flop shoes on, fires the thing up, and the throttle sticks open, and he's trying to drag the brake. And with it's just got the left front locked up. He's got the thing turned locked left, trying to turn, and it didn't get away. And he drove it in the back of a late model team stacker trailer. When he hit the back of the trailer, since he didn't have seatbelts on, it shoved him forward. Both of his knees hit the steering box. His throttle foot went wide open on the throttle. The rear tires stood up like drag tires in the gravel parking lot, and the thing turned off the back of that hauler that he hit and crushed the tailgate, and the guys had to work on their trailer to get the race car out of it. And then he went off through a fence, through a field, and hit a tree. And quite embarrassed. The rescue squad and everybody got out there to him, and they loaded him up on the plus bus and started rolling back over to the pit area. You like that, okay. And come to find out, he had bounced around in there hard enough when he hit the tree that he broke his pelvis and broke his femur. And that cat was hurting bad. No helmet on, no nothing. His face went up, hit the roll cage. He folded over the steering wheel. He got him across the belly, beat him up pretty good. And when that thing turned and stood the tires up, it peppered every one of us with gravel coming off the rear tires, put dents and holes in the wings and the side of the body, broke the window on our little push truck, just tore up. I mean, rocks coming off that thing are getting at it. Even with a 360, it got the job done in a hurry. And we all had to duck a dive and take cover like it was incoming going on. And so that started the whole entire night out with a bad scene. And I'm going to go back a little farther. My grandfather in California, when my grandmother was in the hospital having my dad, my grandpa jumped in a guy's mid-40s midget, maybe late 30s midget, and was firing it up. And back then, midgets ran on gasoline, and they had a fuel leak. And my grandpa got burned up badly from the gasoline fuel getting all over him, firing the car off. And he was in one hospital in town, and my grandmother was in another hospital across town there in Los Angeles. And they got word to my grandma that they didn't think he was going to survive the night or the next couple of days because he was burned really badly. So from that side of it, got a little bit of a family history with it as well. And you're exactly right, Razz. That's the time when you first get to the track and you first fire the thing off. That's one of the most dangerous times. That's when throttles are going to stick because you've been working on them. That's when hoses and lines are left loose. That's when things have been tightened up and maybe pulled a little bit too tight and cracked a fitting underneath, and you're going to get sprayed. That's when things go wrong. There will be stuff that goes wrong through the night, but generally after it's been worked on is when you have the biggest chance of somebody getting hurt. So with our series, I just require our guys to make sure they have all their safety equipment on anytime they climb in a car to fire it off. I'm a pain in the ass because we're in North Carolina and it's dang hot down here and humid in the middle of summer. And my guys don't like getting all geared up to just push off around the pit area and fire it up. But I require it and make them do it.
Yeah, Chili Bowl finally started requiring that.
You remember when Kevin Olson ran with an open face helmet and a T-shirt with a pack of cigarettes wrapped up in a sleeve, though? That's Kevin Olson. That was cool. Yep.
So Andy, question for you.
Yes, sir.
If you were to hop in a car today, what car would you like to hop into and try that you haven't driven before? And that goes for dirt, asphalt, IndyCar, whatever.
Well,
because you've been around all kinds of racing. So
I grew up, worked with the Indy cars, always intrigued, and those were so cool. But those little horse jockeys, I've always been a big fat guy, so I didn't fit in those things worth a damn. Hell, I couldn't even get down when they were dragging them out of the gasoline alley out to the racetrack to line them up for the start of the Indy race. We always had to put our smaller guys in there. But something I have learned lately that I think I can do, I'm ready for a top fuel car. My wife doesn't have one I can take over on, but that other pretty good fat guy is now driving a top fuel car and doing pretty decent at it. Yeah. So I think I want to try a top fuel car. I'm too claustrophobic to have the body put down over me, and I don't want one with a canopy.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, no.
Same as a face shield.
Yeah.
Close your eyes, open them, you're fine.
Exactly. But
so you want to do 330 mile an hour and 1,000 foot. That's your goal.
I'm going to tell you what,
that would pick anything.
That would have to be a hell of a rush.
It's got to be.
That's something I think I could fit in because obviously they put Tony in one. I think I can fit in there too. So
we just keep pushing.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, what did Kenny Schrader say? He's going to keep racing until he gets too big to fit in the car and for his buddies to help him into the car. And then he's going to get bigger friends that put him in the car.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And he's going to keep racing until he runs out of beer.
That'll never happen.
I can promise you, Schrader will never run out of beer.
No, he's a funny dude. Him and Kenny Wallace together is such a riot.
I'm feeling a night with them would put a hurting on my liver.
Oh, good God.
We can't run with them. They're professionals.
No.
Yeah. We can't keep up with those boys.
Yeah, I'd probably blow a motor in hot laps.
Years and years ago, when I first came down here, we ran sprint cars with All-Stars at Dixie Speedway in Woodstock, Georgia. And again, that Bobby Hillin Jr. kid had grown up and become a NASCAR Cup driver. So I called Bobby and I said, hey, you guys are running Atlanta. We're just up on the north side of town at Woodstock. We're going to be in on Wednesday through Saturday. If you have a night you can get free and come up, man, I'd love to see you. I'll get, I have pit passes. Just give me a list of who's coming with you. We'll make sure we have stuff sitting there at the pit gate, so when you get here, you're all taken care of. But Mom and Dad and all of us, we'd like to see you. So if you can get free and come do that. And he says, absolutely, man, I'd love to. So he came to Woodstock, but his contingency was we all had to go to the Cup race in Atlanta. And that would have been, like, say, 1985, 86, somewhere in there.
Horrible time to do that. Horrible time.
Yeah, terrible time to have to go to a Cup race back when they ran Bias-Ply tires and the cars were cool and Earnhardt guy and all those heroes were running.
Yeah.
Break my heart.
Horrible time to go.
So when we got down there, we came to Charlotte. Dygard was having an auction and selling stuff off. So we came over to Charlotte. Mom, Dad, truck. I drove down separately out of Monte Carlo SS. So my golly, it would have been 87 or 88. I'll get my year right. But I drove my own car down so I could hang out a little bit and have some freedom to run around and see everybody I wanted to see. Well, it became the first week or so, I stayed with Bobby Jr., and they were building a Busch team, and they had some really cool guys on that thing. A guy named Jerry Kennan, and Jerry Kennan was on the Mark Martin Valvoline car with Steve Meal and Fennig and all those heroes that were on that car with Mark at Roush Racing. They had a guy named John Munson, and John is now a professor at NASCAR Tech School here, but John Munson was a hero. He was, he worked with so many different guys from the era that were just badasses. And this guy named Todd Bodine. Todd was over there with us. And, never heard of him either, right? So we were sitting there building this stuff at Highline Racing, working during the daylight. We could only work during the hours of daylight because we didn't have lights or anything in the shop. Hell, we didn't have doors on the shop. We're building equipment and stands and stuff in there. So ran around, had a grand time. So I spent the first week or so with Hillen, and then probably a week and a half or so. And then I got over to Schrader's and found Kenny's place. And I could weld and TIG weld, and I could TIG weld aluminum. So Schrader pimped my ass out to every guy around North Carolina that needed stuff welded, because Brian Butler was the only guy over here at the time that could weld things, and he was busy welding seats and all the rest race car parts. So Schrader had me over at Reno's shop and all over everywhere welding anything and everything I could, that those guys, they were bringing me stuff. There were race teams around, they were calling, having to bring stuff over to get it welded, get stuff TIG welded. It was aluminum. So I swear Schrader got 10 years worth of favors back out of that. 2 weeks I was there working for him. And so we ran around, had a blast.
John, bring that stuff over. I got you covered this week, buddy.
Exactly. I welded more doggone tubes on valve covers for valve cover breathers. That would seem to be the most popular thing down here. Everybody wanted tubes to put a K&N filter on their valve cover breathers. I swear I welded 100 or more of those things. And then he took me over to Butler's, and I welded some stuff at Butler's and had a blast. And Brian told me, if you need a job, don't even hesitate. Just show up here. I'll hire you on the spot. Matter of fact, I don't want you to leave. So later on, I did come back down to North Carolina and work for Brian. Brian Butler was the first. Well, Todd Bodine and L.W. Miller. L.W. ended up marrying Kelly Earnhardt.
Oh, you worked for L.W.?
Yep, worked for L.W. for a little while.
Oh, geez,
Todd and L.W. put a team together, and I built the first couple Busch cars that they had on that team, working in the dungeon of a shop over there in Mooresville. And then I went to Butler Built and worked for Brian over there as the sales manager. I wasn't even welding things until it was nighttime, and then I'd weld things at night over there. But then Vic Kangas came in. I welded some stuff for him, and he was crew chief at Moroso. So I got invited to go over with Vic over to the Moroso team. But back to my Schrader thing, we're at the shop, we're welding, we're building all this stuff and doing things for Kenny. And my dad finally had been 3-4 weeks. He was back in Indiana, and he was ready for my ass to come back home and get work done at home. And I'm down here screwing around with Schrader. Exactly. Had stuff to do there. He had welding to do there. So he called around until he found me, and he found me at Schrader's. And he hit Schrader up. Hey, look at there. I just got some. Oh, I asked Dillner just a little bit ago about what was it? What was the
Alberta Chili Bowl?
Alberta Chili Bowl. All I got back from Dillner was ha, 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 and he was laughing about it. So that was a good response. So Dad calls, and he's talking to Schrader. He's threatened Schrader. He asked Kenny, what do you have my kid doing? He said, man, he's welding up all kinds of stuff. And Dad says, good. Either you can send him home because there's work for him to do here, or I can send the rest of his shit down there and he can be your kid. So Schrader gets off the phone. He comes out in the shop. Hey, Andy, what are you making? What are you doing, Andy? I'm like, man, Kenny, I'm finishing up a wheel and tire rack you wanted. Oh, good. I got to have that. And we need to get that other stuff done too. And some of this stuff needs to be welded. And hurry up with that because we got to go get a really good dinner tonight. Oh, okay. Why are we going to get dinner? Because you're not going to be my kid. I'm sending your ass home tomorrow. Okay, we got it. So that night, John and Spook, characters from down here that worked for Schrader, some guy named Ernie Irvin, I don't know whatever happened to him, but he seemed like he was going to be somebody and be a hero too. And Mark Reno and Schrader and Annie and Ernie's first wife, I think her name was, second wife's Kim. I don't remember what the first wife's name was. But a whole bunch of us went to this place called Beauregards. It's on the water at the university area. And there's Coors Lights in long necks on one end of the table, and there's Coors Lights in pitchers on the other end of the table. And I mean, the girls are running wide open with 3 shifts of them running beer to the table, and these guys are going through beer fast. I will preface this with I've worked for 4 race teams sponsored by beer companies, and I'm the screwed up guy that has not acquired the taste for that stuff yet. There you go. Coors Light, silver bullets. I'm a Diet Dr. Pepper guy, so I'm not really a drinker. So I had a long neck Coors Light, and I had my finger in the top. I drank the first one. I had my finger in the top of the second one. Andy, you need a beer? Nope, I got one. I'm good. So I carried a full beer around with me the rest of the night, so I didn't have to get another one. So we get done at the end of the night. They're kicking us out of there, and at the door, there's a breathalyzer machine. You put a quarter in, it gives you a straw. You put the straw in the rubber boot, you blow in it, and it gives you a number what your breathalyzer is and what your blood alcohol level is.
Yeah, they just try to set fast time.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah, that became Ernie's doing shots, and I swear he's blowing alcohol straight down into this straw into the machine, and pissed off because he's not getting big enough numbers, and Schrader's got him outdone. The guy we had to watch out for was John. John was totally plastered and polluted. We left there. We all went back to Concord, Schrader's place. I'm sitting there. Okay. Told you earlier, I'm not a smart guy. This is one of my brilliant moments. I stood back and watched. And Kenny's wife, Annie, she had the lowest number in the breathalyzer. And I followed her to the van. I was like, I'm riding home with Annie. She's the most sober. None of them, because I was sober, none of them would allow me to drive. That ain't happening. Only the drunks can drive. You sober people, shut up and ride in the van. So I climbed in with Andy, and I went all the way to the back seat of the van because I knew that thing wasn't going to back into shit hard enough to hurt me. So I rode.
You're going to get the plus bus if you're in the back. Got it.
Oh, yeah. I got enough seats and stuff to catch me on the way through. So I rode the back of the van. I am not a seatbelt guy, and I put a seatbelt on and wore my seatbelt for that one all the way home. Andy did a fine job. She got us home, parked us in the driveway, and away we went from there. But such a great time, man. We had so much fun, and stories, and most of those stories would be totally incriminating on a whole bunch of people that were there with us that night. So we won't attack those guys because statute of limitations is over with, but they're still married. Some of them are still married to some of those same people. So I'll save them some trouble tonight.
Man, what a bunch of wild stories. That's so
cow.
bitchin' just to hear these stories. I mean, I could listen to
Very
you for another
bitchin'.
couple hours.
So I got another what if for you, Andy. You've worked for majors in the sport of NASCAR. I mean, you worked for Gibbs, you worked for Hendrick, you worked for all the places. Is there somebody that you didn't get a chance to work with that you wish you would have?
Harry Gant, guy was always a hero. I would have loved to have been a part of one of those skull cars with Harry Gant. I'd like to have. It would have been neat just to spend a little bit more time around him. I was fortunate to spend some time around him, but not as much as I would have loved to have had. When Sterling Marlin came to drive for us at Sabco was when I left to go to Hendrick, and my little sister was a huge Sterling Marlin fan. And my God, she was mad at me for a long time because I left when Sterling was her favorite driver was coming on. I'm going to tell you, along with that, yeah, Harry Gant would probably be the top guy that I would have loved to have spent some time around and worked with. Man, I got to work with quite a few really, unbelievable guys.
You work with a bunch of talented people.
One Dale Earnhardt Jr. or something, wasn't you telling us earlier?
Yes, sir. Worked with Dale Jr.'s team for 9 years on that car. Tony Eury Jr. and Tony Eury Sr., two of the neatest, most fun guys I've ever worked with. When I was at Hendrick, when I got there, we had Ricky Craven. We had, I'll be polite, we had Wally Dallenbach driving for us. Randy LaJoie was in the car for a while. And then we got Jerry Nadeau. And I'm going to tell you what, I love that little feller. He was fun. We had a great time with Nadeau. That little son of a gun would stand on the throttle pedal with both feet. He didn't know where it was going all the time. He didn't know what was going on, but he did not have – the butterflies were vertical with him. It wasn't going to be – there wasn't anything else going on. Those bitches were stood up.
There's no P-foot going on.
No. Nadeau was cool. It killed me when he got hurt and we almost lost him and he rattled his noggin around. But luckily, he survived it and he's through it. And, I still see him around town and catch up with him. We had Steve Park at DEI, and he rattled his noggin too. And he owned, for the longest time, owned a battery store right here in Mooresville also. So we run into Park at lunch regularly. That's the cool thing about being where we are right here in the middle of NASCAR country. You can't go out to eat at a restaurant and not have guys around you. Another one that would have been cool to work for in a lot of ways was Robert Yates, because the guy was such a genius on what to do with engines, and he was so good. But he was always a Ford guy, and my parents raised me better than that. So I really couldn't do that side of things.
Yeah, you hear that, Razz?
Yeah.
Smart parents.
So I'm going to interrupt you. I want you to tell a story that you've told me, and it's hilarious. Tell the story about Junior and the power shutoff key.
Oh, dear God. Okay. Dale Jr. has this. He had a really cool Dirty Mo Acres, his fortress out here, his place where he lives. He had a dirt go-kart track and a concrete go-kart track. Concrete track had a nice banking to it. And he was having a party, and he invited the whole team to come over to the party and run go-karts and hang out and have some fun and come drink with him and go to a junior party. We were all thrashing on the car, and we were all highly dedicated. It was Brickyard, and we were busting ass to get this race car done, and we wanted to put the best thing. We wanted to go win Brickyard. I mean, that was a team goal with everybody. We wanted to go win the Brickyard race. And we didn't go to Junior's party. And he didn't say a whole lot about it, but that little bastard held a hell of a grudge because we weren't there. So we get to Indy. We go to Brickyard. He goes out in the first practice, and they call him in to do a plug check and come in, check tire temperatures and all that. And we're in the garage area, and he doesn't come back to us right away. And some of the guys are out on pit lane, and we venture out that way because, we're not seeing the car and this and that. You look down, and that big red Budweiser car all the way off turn 4 in the first pit stall, that baby's kind of to the point where you got to squint and look really hard and need a pair of binoculars to see what it is all the way that far down there. It's a long-ass hike. He had come in. He had parked that thing in the first pit stall. He climbed out of it. Here he comes walking towards us. I'm like, man, what the hell happened that it's broken and it couldn't get to here? What? Man, what do you do? Shut it off way early or something? And he comes walking by us. And he left the steering wheel with the car, which was nice of him. But he looks at all of us as, we meet him part way. And he just walks right on through us. He says, yeah, you bastards will show up at my next party. We left the car sitting there in the first pit stall off turn 4. Okay, so Barry Hoover's with us. B. Hoover's a small guy. We're going to put him in, have him fire it up and drive it back down there so we don't have to push it. Now, Junior what do we call that, premeditated? He had a pair of side cuts. He cut the tie wrap that is the plastic key that kills the battery kill switch in the dash.
Yeah.
He kills the battery on this baby, puts the key in his pocket, and carried the key back to the garage area. We weren't going to be able to fire it up and drive it in. We had to push that big, heavy tank all the way from the end of pit road back to the garage area. We missed part of the next practice session and everything, but by God, he got us all on that one.
I imagine you showed up to the next party, huh?
Yeah, we destroyed every go-kart he had. We went to the next one and we destroyed every go-kart that was there. Those son of bitches were broken.
And you know what? It was probably one of the best parties you ever had because y'all had the most fun.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's all he wanted for his team, though. It wasn't an ego thing. It was, I want you guys to come out, relax, and have fun. You work hard for me. Come out to my place, relax, have fun, and take some of the weight off your shoulders of what you're carrying for me all the time.
Exactly right. We were talking about the teams in the different places. When Sterling came to Sabco, Tony Glover came. And I'm going to tell you what, that little fella has a great way of looking at things, a great way of doing things. And he has a brain that always wants to play in all the gray areas of the rules. And he goes right straight all the way to the red area and the black area of the rules. He liked to fudge things pretty good. But the little bit of time I had with Glover, I really enjoyed him. And when I got to Hendrick, we had a crew chief, a guy named Tony Furr. And everybody tells me, Furr's a grouchy old son of a gun. Man, he's hard to work for, this and that. I called Tony, and it's been 5-6 years ago now because we've been out of the thing for so long. And called him on his cell phone at home and talked to him. I said, hey, I just want to tell you something. I said, you don't get this from a whole lot of guys, I'm sure, but I just want you to know that I love you, boss, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate the time I got to work with you. And as crew chiefs go, you're right there at the top of the list of all my favorites because I just really enjoyed working with you. And we're all getting older. We're losing some of the cool old guys from the series, from the deals. Health issues, man, it's kicking all of us. I'm 60 now, and I'm feeling all of them. And so I called Tony. I said, man, I just want you to know that I think the world of you. And if you need anything at all, man, please call me. Give me the opportunity to pay back in any way I can because it was an absolute blast and an honor to work for you. And I don't want to rat him out, but I could hear sniffling and I could hear some choked up on the other end. And I know there were tears running down his face because he told me so.
Allergies.
Man, I've never had anybody call me to tell me something like that before. But I've been blessed to work with some really good guys. We had Billy Woodruff was the crew chief that hired me on at Sabco. And Billy was a damn genius. He was at Cranifus. He was with Penske. He built some chassis. He built front clips on cars for us that, man, we were perfected. We were right, and guys didn't even know how good we had it. And Robbie Gordon came along as one of those shift drivers that came through. And Glover came in. He got rid of all those cars that Woodruff built because he didn't understand them and didn't know them, and he wanted what he knew and he liked. So we sold off and got rid of a bunch of them. And Robbie crashed everything that we had from Glover, and we plugged him into one of them at Atlanta that was actually one of our Rockingham cars, intermediate or short track kind of car. And he sat on the pole in Atlanta. And it was a scramble to find those Billy Woodruff front clips back again because we didn't have any of them to even measure to find out where the points were and what was going on because Billy took all his jigs and all his stuff with him when he left. And it was a scramble. And our whole goal was to run all the way through Atlanta and not tear that car up, starting on the pole, run the whole race, and keep it in good shape. So when we get back home, we can measure it. And gotta love it, old Fuzz Nuts Robbie. He bent the thing and crashed it and tore it up. We couldn't measure off that one either.
Hey Phil, I think he's about as much of a fan as you are.
Yeah, Robbie. I have no love lost for that son of a bitch.
He was quite challenging to work with.
He's an asshole. I'm going to call it straight out. He's an asshole. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
I'm going to tell you, but I'll tell you what, if there was somebody there and there was an opportunity that he needed to impress somebody, the guy would blow your socks off with talent, ability, and confidence, and then turn around and do something and just destroy the next 4 race cars you have. Like, dude, what are you doing? That same Lynn Sherrill that told me about the Californians. Did we cover that on this deal already? Or that was in the pre-race?
Yeah.
Lynn Sherrill was a redneck guy from right here in Kannapolis. And Robbie, because he liked the IndyCar stuff, he kept having Lynn cut the seats. And we kept laying the seat down more and more and more and more. And the farther we cut the seat and laid the seat down in the car so Robbie was laying down instead of sitting up, the harder he crashed, the earlier he crashed and the more he destroyed shit. So after a while, we kind of had a consensus around the shop that we're going back to a standard seat. We're going to sit him up almost like a truck where he's sitting up straight and he can see over the dash and he can see where he's going and he can quit running into things. And Robbie came in and he looks in there and he sees the seat and he looks at Len. He says, "What's this?" And Len says, "This is, we're all tired of you crashing our race cars. This is what you're getting from now on until you quit crashing. This is what we're going to have." And Len looks at him, or Robbie looks at Len. He says, "I'll tell you right now, I'm going to the office. Your ass might as well start packing up. You're fired." Robbie goes to Felix's office. He grabs crew chiefs and he goes into Felix's office. He's ranting and raving in front of Felix about, "I want that guy fired. I don't want him around my team. I don't want him to have anything to do with us. He's out of here. He's got to be gone today." And Felix looked across the desk at Robbie and he sat up in his chair and he says, "Len's been with me since the beginning. That guy's going to be here long after you're gone. And it probably ain't going to be that long till you're gone, but he's still going to be with me all the way until he doesn't want to be here or he's dead. But he's one of my OG guys. He's going to be here forever." And Tony Glover turned around and he walks down. He goes back to the back and he walks up to Len and shakes hands with him. He says, "I want to make sure you and I are always on the same page, because from what I just learned from Felix, you know where all the skeletons are around here and everything else." He says, "If I get in trouble around here, I want you on my side. You got the horsepower."
Sounds like a good
They
game
got a
plan.
car owner tell the driver he's replaceable that easy, and his crew guys are going to outlast him.
They call it the 30-30 rule. You walk 30 feet out the front door of the building, turn around, look 30 feet up. If it don't say your name on the building, you ain't in charge.
Yep.
Right.
Well,
that's right.
Your story there, that's Robbie Gordon in a nutshell. That dude, he's just, I've had a couple personal experiences with him. We raced off-road with Fluger, and that dude is just a grade A prick. I don't like him, and I've told him right to his face, "I don't like you, and you're lucky that I've been told I can't pop you."
You'll appreciate this. We were at Bristol. He cussed us and MF'd us on the radio for 50-plus laps and then crashed again. And the thing he cussed us about wasn't even anything we did. He ran into somebody on track and knocked the toe completely out on the thing. So we were in the pits dialing the front end back underneath it with strings and ropes and just trying to tape measures, just trying to get it close so it could finish the day and not knock the tires off of it. And he cussed us and just, "You killed me in the pit area, you son of a bitches," and just went off MFing us like crazy. And he was still holding the mic on the radio under green and crashed again because the spotter couldn't tell him that they were crashing in front of him because he had the mic pushed down cussing at us. And he came back in, he parked that thing, he drove it into the back of the hauler, ran up on the tailgate, hit the back of the hauler, tore the polished diamond plate up back around the back of the Featherlight trailer, got out, went in the lounge, changed clothes, grabbed his stuff, went across the racetrack while it was under caution, live racetrack, got us yelled at by the NASCAR officials and everything else. And we're standing there, and I looked at his dad, and I said, "You know, you really ought to have your ass kicked for raising such a belligerent little bastard." And I thought that was going to be the point where his dad was going to hit me.
Yeah, you're lucky you didn't get hit.
His dad put his head down, looked down, and he said, "Yeah, you're right. That's just over the top right there." And his dad was embarrassed by Robbie's actions that day. And that was pretty large. So that Monday, we get back to the shop, and 3/4 of the team quit. And they all went up to Felix's office. All the road crew guys, all the over-the-wall guys, everybody quit, and they were done, and they weren't tolerating it anymore. And Felix is like, "Oh, bullshit." He says, "Oh, no, bullshit. No, why, it took me so much to get this group. We're not letting some damn smart-ass or pain-in-the-ass driver screw up what I have going on here. We'll do something else with him." So Robbie got sent across the street to Mike Hillman and his guys who were taking care of Joe Nemechek's car. And Joe Nemechek got brought over to the main shop with us. And we got Nemechek as a driver, and they got Robbie Gordon.
I was going to ask you who is your least favorite driver to work with, but I'm thinking I can catch the drift here.
Yeah, there were a couple. There were a couple that, for the most part, honest to goodness, I loved everybody we worked with. But yeah, Robbie there were two of them right in that era that were a little bit more of a challenge than they ever should have been.
So what's your bottom three then?
I'm still friends. I'm still friends with him. I can't quite go there. Just to,
Offline. When we stop recording, we want to know the bottom three.
Patreon subscribers only.
Offline, we can take care of that. But there were.
Well, thanks for listening, guys. It's been a great show. We're going to catch you next week.
Hey,
join Patreon.
Up.
You might see it.
That's what I was about to say. Sign up for Patreon. Right. You might catch that.
There you go. There's a way to sell some more memberships. The Days of Thunder movie came out, and everybody laughs about the Days of Blunder and everything else that we call it. These guys, racers in general, aren't any different. It's the same kind of characters, same kind of group of guys. They do all the same stunts that happened in that movie. The guys do the same shit. When I got to Hendrick, we had Ricky Craven, and we're in Texas testing, and we're all going off to get dinner afterwards, and we're all piled in this Suburban, and the rest of the guys have already had a few cold ones. So being a non-drinker, Stapp, you're driving. So I got the Suburban. We're wheeling down the highway out there. Craven's in the back seat behind me, and we come up on, there's a state trooper, Texas state trooper. We're rolling along. He's in the middle lane. I'm out in the left lane. We're rolling along. Well, Craven reaches over my shoulder, and he starts hitting the cruise control button. And he just just tagging that baby as fast as he can. And this thing just keeps climbing. I can tell you Suburban at that era would max out at 99 mile an hour. They wouldn't go to 100, but they had them maxed out at 99. When we went past that state trooper, that bitch was pegged out at 99 mile an hour. Craven says, if you hit the brake, you're buying dinner. I said, if I don't, you're buying dinner and the ticket. Well, he says, I'm not paying for the ticket. That's on you. So we go by the state trooper, and I look over at this guy, and I just wave to him. And we go right on by him. That trooper went off on the exit and went away and left us alone, didn't even come bother us. He turned and went off an exit ramp, and we drove right on by him. And Craven sitting there was like, I cannot believe the luck you have right here. He said, I was sure I was going to get you in trouble. And I was like, I was sure when I went to jail, you were going with me. If it took me beating the hell out of you to get us both arrested for public, fighting and everything else, you were going with me to jail because you got more money. If you're getting bailed out, I'm going to get bailed out with you. So we joked about that. But Ricky was he was one of those characters. He was fun. We had good times with him. I can tell you, I'm old school. I grew up around guys that didn't take any shit, and I just didn't hang out with teams that had drivers I didn't care for. And we could get rid of them, and there were always, if you could build something and you could build a cooler mousetrap and you could build nice stuff, and if you had a crew chief that had an idea of what he wanted and you could build something way cooler than what he wanted and knock his socks off, you were going to get a raise and you were going to have job security. And that was more important than being attached to a driver, was being attached to a crew chief that had your back and had you covered and appreciated what you could do for him. So those crew chiefs made sure that we weren't ever going to get in trouble. And I'm going to go one more on that. My favorite one on that is Tony Urey Jr. and Tony Urey Sr. They had my back no matter what. And I got Tony for a vacation when we were at Hendrick. We got caught at Daytona with Jerry Nadeau, the first outing out. We had the full gamut of all the cheated up parts on that thing because Nadeau had no points from the year before, and our car didn't really have points from the year before. So
all
we
the
had
gray area parts.
Yes, so we had to qualify our way into the Daytona 500 because we had to get in on our own merit, race our way in at the 125s or qualify our way in. So we had all kinds of things. We had rear jack screws that would let the back of the car drop down, gave it a little over an inch of drop down to get the spoiler out of the air, so we were sure we were going to get a good fast lap. And when they dropped, they actually scattered the pieces out of them and broke, and it dropped parts on the track, and we got caught. And there were so many things. I had windshield braces that pulled down and flattened the windshield out, took the bow out of it, made it flat, kicked the air up over the roof. We had some spoiler stuff going on that flattened the spoiler out. Oh, man, we had fender braces that pulled the front fenders in, got those tucked in. You had a fender width that they had to be at a certain point on the tire. Well, out on the grid, you lean your feet against them and push in, and the front fenders would collapse in 1.25 inches on each side, narrow up the front end, get her through the air better. we had a lot of really cool parts on that car, and a lot of them are in the NASCAR Hall of Fame here in Charlotte. And I had a thing when I made those kind of cheated up parts gray area parts that I knew were going to get, had a potential for getting caught. I would put the date, the car number, my initials AS, and circle the whole thing all with an electric pencil, so it had engraved into it. So it was actually etched into the part. And Buzz McKim was the curator at the Hall of Fame here. And we were talking one night at dinner, and he says, Have you brought your boys and come down to the museum? I said, no. I said, we need to do that sometime. And he says, well, we now are housing the Hall of Shame. We're housing all the parts that the NASCAR officials have confiscated. And I started laughing. I was like, yeah, I got a bunch of parts in there. And he says, is there a way to know what they are? And I told him how I engraved the stuff on them. He called me 2 days later. He says, bring your boys and get your ass down here. He said, I got a table full of your stuff down here. Your kids need to see this stuff, see what a cheater you were. And that was so cool.
That is badass.
The electric actuated.
Trouble on that. I'm sorry.
Did you have part of the electric actuated spoiler?
We might have had something along the lines of that. Yeah, used the windshield wiper motor out of an S10 pickup truck. Mm-hmm.
Don't know what parts were used exactly, but
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
S10.
Yeah, we might have had. Yeah, we might have had a few pieces here and there. Yeah.
Nice.
We had a car at Hendrick that the whole thing pivoted basically at the wheel wells, and the whole back of the car, spoiler and everything, mounted on a tube that went up underneath the frame, and it looked like, with drip check, we made it look like it was welded to the frame, painted over everything, made it all look like it was right, but the whole back of the car, that tube would separate off the frame and separate down, so your spoiler, everything in the back of it, they just poof out at the rear fender wells, and the whole back of the car would sag down. And they caught us with it. So then Ricky Hendrick ran it in the ARCA series. He won a couple ARCA races at super speedways with that car before they caught it and had us not ever bring it back again also. But our teams and our crew chiefs would give you a bonus and a raise every time they wrote a rule about what you were doing. And
if you make the rule book thicker, you get a bonus point.
Bonuses became fun, and it was fun to see how many of them you could add up in a season. And I can tell you, I never started the next year except at Sabco. That was the only place we never got a raise. We never got a bonus when I was there. And Felix's son-in-law, Armando, was running the team there. And he asked me about people I don't like in a series in the sport. He's the top of the list of guys. He's worse than Robbie Gordon. You couldn't trust the guy. He wouldn't pay his bills, and you couldn't trust anything that came out of his mouth. So he would be my probably biggest villain of the whole NASCAR time that I spent. He'd probably have to be at the top of the list. And I did work for a Busch team owner out of Florida that if you went near him with your wallet in your pocket, somehow all the money ended up out of it. But that guy was a bit of a shyster and a crook too, but he didn't last very long, and they figured him out, and he got rooted out of the deal pretty quickly also. But you got to have the good with the bad. So Tony Uri Jr., we got him a little bit of vacation time as well, and he wouldn't rat me out for it. And he took the 6-week vacation. And usually when you get your crew chief banned from going to the racetrack, crew chiefs in general are on the road all the time. When they're home with their wives and their families for 5 or 6 weeks straight without getting to go to the races, they become the most miserable pricks you'll ever be around in your life. So we learned early that you don't get your crew chief suspended because it makes it so he wants to be in the shop 7 days a week, 12 hours a day at least, because he doesn't want to have to be at home because he's already tired of his wife after the first week. So some of them you didn't do that to. Tony Jr., on the other hand, he didn't like to get up early in the morning, so he was a mid-morning guy. And he liked to stay there and work late at night because he was a midnight oil kind of dude. But we would sit around there, and he was smart, and we'd work on what we could do. And we figured out what we could do to make our race cars faster. We figured out the coil bind situation that was going on and how we made a pull-down rig so we could pull our car down because we didn't have one in the shop. So we figured out a way to go from shock mounts and lower our whole entire race car. You could watch what went on with the bump steer. You could watch everything that suspension does sitting on the floor in the shop, because it's really hard to guess what it's doing on the racetrack. And we just sat there and worked on things and made things better all the time. To this day, Tony Jr. has a business here in town. They build late models and NASCAR Tour modifieds. And I go by and pick on him. We meet for lunch every now and then. I see him around town. He's married and has 2 adopted boys, and one of them is into racing. He's running the outlaw carts at Millbridge, and it's fun to, be around those guys. And Tony Jr. used to laugh at me about the dirt stuff, and now his son's running dirt stuff, and he's loving it and picking my brain all the time about things we could do. And if I have time, I'll go one more cool story, if you don't mind.
We're gonna have to bring it to a close after that. We're 2 hours into our podcast, but yeah, go ahead. Give us one more.
We might have to break this up into part 1.
You're
part
definitely
2,
gonna have to come back,
right.
because you have way more stories to tell than what we're telling right now.
We can do that. When USAC ran the first non-wing sprint car show at Charlotte Motor Speedway dirt track, we had a 360 car down here. It was USCS or ASCS legal. So that 360 engine restrictors and the ram tubes, ASCS heads on it. We were totally legal to travel with those guys, but we were 250, 300 horsepower down from what the USAC 410 guys had, and a whole lot of cubic inches. So they came to Charlotte, and it had rained for a couple days before. And I called Jason Smith at USAC and told him, I said, hey, man, I'll help fill the field. We'll pull the wings off our sprint car, and we'll show up over there, but I need tow money. And Smith says, Stapp, you've never asked for tow money. Your dad never asked for tow money. What do you mean you need tow money? You live in North Carolina. It's like, yeah, I know. I said, but it's a long way from the shop over to the dirt track. How far is it? I was like, well, if I go the opposite direction and go get on I-85 on the highway, it's a whole one exit the other direction. But if I go the back roads, it's only about 6 blocks from where we are, where our shop is, over to the dirt track. I said, so I need some tow money to get there. He starts laughing. He says, well, how much tow money do you think that's going to take? I said, well, if you buy me a hot dog and a Coke, we'll call it even, because that's going to be about $20 at Charlotte. They rape everybody on the price of all the concessions over there. So that'll hit you for $20. That's fair enough. That's like putting fuel in the tank. We'll call that good. So we took my sprint car and we went over and we ran this USAC show. All the guys from the shop got into it and they came to the track. My car's in the trailer at Dale Earnhardt Incorporated at the Bud Shop, and I parked the trailer all the way out in the way corner of the parking lot, away from everything. I was trying so hard not to disrupt things that were going on. I told Tony Jr., I said, look, dude, I'm going to work until 2, and then I'm going to peel out of here, jump in the truck. We're going to haul ass over to the speedway. It's like 30 minutes over to the track. I said, that'll get me there plenty early enough for what's going on. Well, it rained all day Wednesday, and we were supposed to race on Wednesday. So we got rained out. So we went back. We did it on Thursday. And he's in there, and he's like, man, just leave. Just get over there and get set up. I said, no, seriously, dude, we're dirt racers. We show up. We need an hour to get unloaded, and we're ready for hot laps. It's not a big deal. I don't have to be there 2 days ahead of time to, run a damn race tonight. So Tony Jr. comes to me. He says, where's the car? I said, it's out in the trailer. He said, where's the trailer? I said, man, way out in the far corner of the parking lot. Well, where are the keys? In the truck where they belong. Well, my keys are always in my truck. Okay, so he leaves. He goes out. He backs my truck and trailer up to the door, and he rolls the sprint car out. So my stupid little blue sprint car is sitting in the Bud Shop, and I turn around, and he's backed it onto the surface plate where we set up the cars and everything else. And now he's confused because the tires are too big to fit on our scale pads. The car's 80, well, for that show, I stretched the wheelbase out. So it's normally 86 inches. I stretched it out to 88 inches, moved the front axle forward to get a bunch of spring rate in the front end, because the kid that drove for me at that time had never run without a wing before. And I really didn't want to get him landed on his head and get him hurt here at his home track and everything else. So we did everything we could. I built a really wide front axle for it, moved the front end forward. My mom and dad came down from Indy. He brought me wheels so we could move the right sides out and just spread that thing out so it wasn't going to just run down the corner and flop over. So Tony's got the car in the shop. Eventually we pushed it off and fired it up. And Randy Earnhardt was Dale's brother, and he ran the parts department. And Randy comes over, and he's looking the car over. And he's parts guy at DEI. He is used to everybody around that place that has a race car stealing stuff from him to support their own racing operation. And I'm watching Randy, and he's looking it over, and he's got a totally puzzled look on his face. He's not sure about this thing at all. And I said, Randy, let me start explaining stuff to you. And I show him. I said, now, I want you to understand, there are none of your parts on this thing. You don't have anything. Your shit's all way too heavy for a real race car. Your shit's jalopy shit for heavy race cars. My lightweight little race car, I got no interest in anything you have. And I said, come with me. We walked up in the trailer, and I had a list of cabinets in the trailer, and I started opening drawers. And I said, here in the shop, we run red shop rags. So I went out and bought white shop rags. I don't have the same color rags you have. So we run Snap aerosol spray cans and stuff. I contacted Berryman out of Texas, got a sponsorship from them. All my racks, all my cabinets, all my stuff's full of Berryman products. I said, I'm not even going to steal brake clean from you or anything else. I said, we run Bowman bolts in the shop, and I got Car Products bolts on this thing. You can see the heads of them. It's not the same. I'm not going to take bolts out of your bolt bin to run my race car. I'm not going to take anything from here to run on my race car. And again, your shit's way too heavy anyway. And he's like, well, how much does that little car weigh? I said, right now, without wings on it, it's probably 1,325 pounds. Without a driver, it's probably 1,250 pounds sitting here. He looks at me, he says, ain't no way. And Jeff Clark was our gas man, and Jeff Clark, big, burly, massive, big son, big, tall guy. Yeah. And I looked over and I said, Clark, grab the front bumper and pick it up and touch your chin with it. He says, yeah, right. I said, no, seriously, grab the front bumper and pick it up. Jeff Clark bent down, grabbed the front bumper, and picks this thing up off the surface plate, comes up, and the bumper's just about to hit him in the chin when the rear bumper touches on the plate and it won't go any farther. And he's got a big smile on his face. He starts laughing. He goes, oh, my God, you're kidding. And Randy looks over. He says, there's no way that you can just pick it up like us. Yeah, that's what we're all about. Like I say, your shit's way too heavy for me. So we walked through, and I pulled every drawer open in the listers. I let him look all through the trailer. Every cabinet and trailer I opened up. He reaches up and puts this is Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s brother. He reaches up, puts his arm around my neck. He says, you're all right, kid. He says, I've never had anybody that do something like that and not have anything from what we use here. I said, man, the only thing that's in this trailer that we have in the shop is Snap-on tools, because that's all I have, and I use Snap-on tools for everything I do. So I got my Snap-ons in here. I said, we actually have a set of Craftsman up here in the front listed cabinet just for that. I said, but we got Snap-on tools in the shop. I got my own. Mine don't have my name on them. Yours are all engraved with DEI 8, 16, 1. I mean, they've got something there, 3s on a bunch of them. We got tools that are, those are your tools in there. This shit that's in the trailer is all mine. Uncle Randy, from that point on, anything I needed to have for my sprint car to go racing with, if he had a connection, he had somebody who could get it for me, he was 100%. But he drugged me over and he says, you're going to Charlotte tonight? I said, yes, sir. Man, I might just come over and watch you guys. I said, man, if you do, I'll buy your pit pass. I'd be honored to have you come help us. And he came over. I had a pit pass sitting for him at the sign-in shack just in case he made it. I didn't care. If he didn't, it was well worth the investment just to have one there for him. But he grabbed me and he said, come here. He said, we got these big, huge coolers. He said, we are sponsored by Coca-Cola, and I got all this product in my bay outside my office. And, man, we're never going to use this. He said, we got to go through it faster than I'm going through it. He said, you grab anything down from here you want. We got the ice machines. You fill the cooler up, stock it with drinks, fill it up with ice. Anytime you go racing, you grab this cooler from me right here, you stock it, and you use it for anything you need. Anytime you need sodas, you just come over. I said, sir, I will come ask you and make sure you know I will never come get something without you knowing about it. He says, man, you and I, we're always going to be okay. We lost Uncle Randy, I guess 10 years ago now. But, man, what a cool character. Just a neat guy he was, too. But it was when you have that relationship with him and his position and his ability, he made sure that we had, I was never needing anything at all from that point on. But those guys all came to the races with us. And to finish the story out, Tony Stewart had a Make-A-Wish kid that wanted to spend a day with Tony doing what Tony liked to do. And that ended up on the Sunday after we ran Charlotte. And side note, there were 45 sprint cars that showed up for the USAC race at Charlotte. We were the only 360 that showed up. Everybody else was 410s, Midwest guys, heroes. We're standing in line outside. My driver was a little bit nervous about things, and he wasn't sure being first time ever driving a non-wing car, and his dad told him when you crash those things, you're going to flip forever and it's going to hurt you. So he had a few nights of sleeplessness and everything else, and I wasn't sure he was going to make it. We're signing in, and Dave Darland's standing next to me at the sign-in deal. And I asked him, I said, what are you driving tonight? He said, I don't have a ride. I came down. His wife, Brenda, was working for USAC. I said, you brought your stuff, didn't you? He said, oh, yeah, I don't go anywhere without it. I'm like, well, come see me a little bit. If you'll lower your standards, if I need you, I'll put you in a 360 car. If you'll lower your standards to drive a 360 car, we'll take our chances and see if we can attack these guys. But with you driving it, we'll be in good shape. And so he followed us over to the trailer. He looked the car over, and he goes, man, yeah. He says, hell yeah, I'll drive this thing. She's sweet. She's, we'll be all right. Well, he hung around with us. My driver got there. He's mad as hell because I got Dave Darland standing there. He felt a little threatened. So he told Darland, he says, you can go find something else to do. This is my ride, and I'm running it tonight. I don't need you around here. So Darland ended up driving for Gocher, who was parked next to us, and USAC Midwest team. So he drove a 410 car for those guys. At the end of the night, we started 11th in the feature. Out of 45 cars, we transferred out of our heat race, made the A main out of the heat race with a driver who had never run without a wing before, and beat a whole bunch of superheroes, including Tracy Hines, who packed up and went home because we put him on the trailer. And we started 11th in the feature, and we ran 7th with a kid who'd never done it before, and he outran Corey Cruzman. He outran a whole bunch of different guys. So we had an absolutely great night. So then we found out that Tony Stewart had this play day going on with his Make-A-Wish guy, and what he was doing was his sprint cars stayed there. His USAC Champ Dirt car was running at Syracuse, so they were up in the Northeast. He brought in a 2-seater sprint car, a 2-seater late model, and a 2-seater modified, like a big block dirt modified, all for this young kid to get to go for rides in. And Schrader brought over a couple of modifieds, and one of those was one of his school cars was a 2-seater. So this Make-A-Wish guy kid got to go for rides in all these different cars with different guys driving him. And Stewart drove a lot of them, and Schrader drove, and all these different guys driving stuff. So this kid had a great day. Well, our car, you can only have one seat in it. But we put the wings back on it. And because Dale Jr. had shown a little bit of interest in wanting to try a sprint car, and it was Coca-Cola 600 weekend, I took the sprint car back over with the wings on it, figuring, and, we talked to Junior about it, and he was going to come over and drive the thing at Charlotte. Well, we ran really good at the 600, and he got alcohol poisoning overnight and didn't make it the next day. He had, he had a hangover and everything else, and he never showed up. But Tony Uri Jr. came out, Tony Sr., guys from Stewart's Cup team were there. Steve Grissom, we were working out of Steve Grissom's shop, and his son Kyle, because Kyle ran Legends cars and late models later on, and we kept a sprint car in their shop, and Woodlands were over that way as well. So we all got to have some fun right there and had a fun group of guys. Jason Leffler was still with us, and he was there that night. And so we kept putting guys. I put Tony Uri Jr. in my sprint car and let him go out with a wing car and run around. And Tony Stewart saw that he didn't destroy my shit, so Tony put him in his non-wing USAC car. And I was like, Stiffy, we got to talk here, bub. I said, Stiffy is Tony Uri Jr. That's the nickname we have for him. And I'm like, Stiffy, we got to talk. I said, this thing's a whole different animal. The wing's not on it. It's not going to save your ass. It's not going to be stuck to the ground. If you get in trouble in this thing and you think you're going to crash or you're going to be in trouble or something's going wrong, the only thing that saves this race car is you got to go wide open throttle. Throttle will get you out of every trouble you get into. So he's running a couple laps. He sails that bitch off into turn 3, and she's just sliding along. He's got the throttle shut off. He's doing a death slide sideways, headed for the wall. I'm standing there at the wall with Tony Stewart standing next to me, and like, throttle, 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 come on. And about then, he realized he was going to hit. He just picked up the throttle, and the car hooked and drove off the wall and drove away. A couple laps later, he does it again. He throttled up early, and he drove off the wall again. And Tony looks at me, he says, man, I never even thought to tell him that. He said, I'm sure glad you did, because I lost a race car right there. And so we ran that whole day out and had a blast. And going back there with the wing car, even with our little 360, the wing made us the fastest car there that day. So everybody got in it. Jason Leffler was there, and he's talking to my sister. Susanna was down, and he said, I've never run a wing car. Do you think my brother would your brother would let me try his wing car? And Susanna looks at him and says, yeah, I know he will. All you got to do is ask him. but you got to grow the stones and you got to go ask him. I'm not going to ask him for you. You're a big boy. You're a professional race car driver. You grow a pair of balls and you go over and ask him. Well, son of a gun didn't. He never came over and talked to me. He never asked about it. And a little while later, he and Allison are in a Cadillac and they're driving out. They're leaving to go get dinner. And I stopped him. I was like, hey. And he puts the window down on her side. I looked at him. I said, I thought you were supposed to grow a pair of marbles and come ask me if you could drive this shit box. Well, you know, I don't know. I don't really know you. And you were kind of busy and this and that. I said, Leffler, you've known me for most of the time that you were a little kid. So you may not remember it, but I was around. I said, all you got to do is ask. I said, did you bring your shit? Yeah. He says, can I run it? I was like, yeah, I'm sitting here waiting on you. You're one of the next ones to go. And he gets out. He throws his wallet at Allison sitting in the passenger seat, throws the car in park. He jumps out of it, opens the trunk, grabs his helmet bag out of there, looks at her. He says, if you're hungry, go get something to eat. I'm going to drive a wing car. And into the trailer he goes to put his helmet on, helmet bag and everything else. Stewart sees this. He's over at his trailer. He sees Leffler going in the trailer to put a helmet on, and Tony grabs all his shit. He still had his fire suit on. He grabs his helmet and stuff, and here he comes.
Boys.
Yeah, here he comes. He's running. And I look up and like, what the hell? What made you run? Is there food over here or something? Oh, fuck you, squid lips. He comes over and he says, are you going to let Leffler drive this thing? I said, yeah. He finally grew the stones, and yeah, I'm going to let him run it. Oh, man. He says, hey, and Tony starts climbing in the car. I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm going to run it before Leffler runs it. He's going to destroy it. There ain't going to be anything left. I'm going to go ahead of him. Tony climbs in. He runs laps, and he ran probably 10 or 12 laps wide open around there. And he comes back in. He rolls back up to us, shuts it off, and he says, needs probably an inch of stagger taken out of it. He said, but I learned something. He said, I pulled the wing back. And I pulled the wing back because he said, it's just sitting there stagger loose. And he said, I kept pulling the wing back. And he says, I felt the wing stall. He said, I got it far enough back and I felt it quit working. I felt it stall. And I went back forward with it and it came back to me. He said, I've never felt a wing stall and I've never felt that feeling before. He said, man, that's just cool right there. He said, I learned something today. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So we jacked it up. We took an inch and a half of stagger out of it and moved the right rear end just a little bit. Leffler sits down in it. That little short son of a gun couldn't see over the dash. He drove 15 laps wide open with his head out the left side, looking out the left side of the cowl, ran 15 laps around there and was faster than Stewart was, and came back in, and we got stopwatches, and Stewart's looking at the stopwatches, and he's pissed because Leffler just outran him. He said, well, it's only because you tightened it up a little bit, took the stagger out of it. He says, let me go back out now. He says, I can beat that. I said, no. She's done. We're going to cut her off. We're going to put her away. We've worn out my motor. And you guys are going to have a pissing contest out of this thing, and I'm going to lose a race car. So it's going in the trailer. We're done for the day.
Smoke would have hung on the fence trying to beat his time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you. Man, I appreciate it. This has been fun. I'm sorry to tie you up and run you out way past your bedtime and your dedicated time here, but thank you for having me.
Nothing to apologize for. It's been amazing. We really appreciate all the stories. There's some you haven't got to that I know about. I want to. So we're gonna have you back for sure. I want to hear the story about. I want to hear the story about your dad and the RV and the train for one.
Yep, we gotta hit that.
The other one is when you broke a sprint car in two pieces.
Yes, sir.
So
I'll send you pictures of that too.
So I know John had some stuff from the Las Vegas race. We're just gonna have to hit it next week, man. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. This was way better than what I had.
This is amazing.
I just want to hit one thing before we close out. Can one of y'all pick up the photo I sent in the message and share it?
While we're waiting on that, what I do want to bring
because we're missing a Mohican, and I got to say something about the weekend.
While we're waiting on the big picture
go
to come up, if you race at Verona Speedway, they have pre-registration open. Get in on that and pre-register simply because it makes time at the front gate on opening day a lot easier.
Done.
We need to help JT out,
Bridger.
I can't find that picture, Neil. Can someone else pull it up?
I got it. You guys ready?
Go for it.
I'm ready. I love this picture.
Make it bigger.
don't know if I can make it bigger. That's the big. Put on your big guy glasses or your old guy glasses.
Does that show Neilden on the number 1 spot and
On the
Soper
number
2
1,
spot?
And apparently they both beat Whalen.
Yeah, we both beat Whalen, but again, I will say this is the B team. So this was the B main. We didn't transfer the A. They didn't let us transfer. But as of right now, this year, I am the fastest 30 slider.
Okay.
How many people actually showed up to race the go-kart?
15.
15 Corona guys?
Yeah, 15. Thomas started pole in the B main. I told him I wouldn't do him dirty into turn 1, but I didn't say shit about turn 3. So he left a gap. I took it, ran away. White flag going into 1. I knew he was going to try to send me, so I just went super deep, so he didn't have a chance. And then after the checker, he dirty slattered my ass hard. He comes sliding past my nose sideways.
Who won the A main?
One of the kids. One of the little 60-pound kids.
Yeah, exactly.
So before we get to our socials, Andy, I want to give you a chance to promote your most recent purchase of a sprint car related company.
Well, I have a few things going on. We bought the CNR engine heaters for the preheaters, the aluminum engines. We preheat them before we fire them off first time, so they don't drag the bearings out of them and pull the rings out of them. So it's a CNR diesel kerosene powered engine heater, and I bought that business a little while back, and we are developing a new design, new product. They changed some of the internal guts on us, so we're making the latest upgrade. I've got quite a few of the older ones out, and then some of the new ones coming out as well right now. And so if you have any kind of a need for an engine preheater, it's Stapp Enterprises, S-T-A-P-P Enterprises. Jerry Cobb's out in California is doing my website stuff right now. Please be patient with me a little bit because Cobb's Portuguese a little slow, but he catches up at times, so he'll have me hooked up in a little while, and we'll have that ready to go. But phone number is 704-791-9390, and we have parts in stock. We can service them and take care of them. We also have we talked about it earlier, the Carolina Sprint Tour. If any of your listeners happen to get lost back in the southeast side of the country, please look us up, show up and catch a good, fun, goofball, neat group of racers that we run all around here and within 3 hours of Charlotte. And like I say, we have some really good races and really good times. And then our 360 410 car travels around eastern part of the country. We get up into Pennsylvania. We do some Midwest stuff at times. But my driver's family has a canvas and awning business here in Charlotte, and their business is going well, so we don't get to travel so much, and our stuff at the shop keeps me busy as well. At 60, you're supposed to throttle back and start to think about that retirement thing or something like that, but instead we just kind of went wide open throttle through the trees, charge on out there like a bunch of idiots. But, well, I have no plans of retiring. I figure I'm going to have to work for probably 10 years after I die to be able to pay the bills I have now. So what the hell? We'll just keep going at this.
Well, thanks again for coming on, Andy. You are welcome back anytime. This has been a blast.
Absolutely.
Man. Yeah, like every 6 months.
Hell yeah.
Let's get the half year update.
Tell you what, you might really want to do it like every 6 months and not any more often than that, because your audience is going to quit after this, and you're going to need time to build them back up so you can get them back and subject them to this crap again.
Well, see, Andy, that's what I said twice a year. That'd be every 6 months.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
It's also a good thing we don't have that much of an audience right now, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But dude,
we
these
might have
stories,
to
though,
upload
I need
this in
some
2
more
parts.
Jack Hewitt stories the next time you're here.
Absolutely. Man, we've had a million of them, and whole lot of fun with him. So he's one of my heroes and always will be.
All right, John, hit our socials real quick.
Dirty Sliders on Facebook, at Dirty Sliders on Instagram, or on X, and Dirty.Sliders on Instagram. That's us. Like, subscribe, watch, comment, all that fun stuff.
And stay tuned for an announcement on Patreon here, probably next podcast.
Heck yes. Got that going.
Thanks for listening. We appreciate all the support. Once again, thanks Andy Stapp for joining us. Good night, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys. Good night, everybody.